Here we go. Okay, welcome to Fresh Set of Downs. It's the playoff edition, and we have a very special guest with us tonight. My name is Bruce Badgley, along with my buddy Bob Long from District 12 territory, but the number one seed in 6A here in District 3, Mark Evans, joins us tonight. Coach, gosh, we had an opportunity to speak a little bit here before the broadcast, but you've got a first round bye. How does that feel?
Well, I mean, good things come to those who wait. So you got to play it the way you got to play the hand you're dealt with, right? So I mean, to me, I'd love to stay in the flow, but we're going to take this week to improve upon some of the details that we have kind of let slide over the last few weeks. So, it's I guess they could say it's both a blessing and a curse. So we'll take the bye, we'll play it as they come.
Well, Coach, great to have you on. Thanks again for doing this. Bob Long here. The value in high school football of an established, a veteran quarterback, specifically a guy who's been through the wars and have been able to kind of year over year go through it. How important has that been to you guys, and what can you say about your man under center?
Oh, well, it's invaluable. From a teachable moment perspective, he's been a 34, 35 game starter. 11 starts as a sophomore, 13 last year, 10 this year. So do my mental math for me, Bob. I'm not a math game. So I would say that's 34, right? 11, 13, 10, 34.
Yep. On the number.
I'm not here for my math genius, that's for sure. But, if it's in 10 yards increments, I think I can handle myself. But no, it's invaluable. And the relationship that he not only has with his teammates, but the relationship he has with us as coaches and with me, we've watched film every morning since he's been a sophomore at 6:45, 3 days a week, just him and I talking about scenarios. And he's brought a bunch of guys along with him last year and a bunch of guys this year, and trying to set the tempo of what you have to do. And as far as work ethic, second to none. Not only does he have the talent, but he has the work ethic to go with that talent. And again, where he goes, we go. And I think he wants that pressure.
Now and sorry, Bruce, to jump in, but Hayden, Lehigh commit, if I'm correct on that. But a little birdie told me he was in the building at Penn State this past weekend for the Indiana game, which is pretty cool. But his process, how has that been for you as a coach? And I'll broaden it for any of your athletes, and a lot of them are going to go play at the next level. What type of role do you as a coach have in that stage of the game?
Well, I think it's an instrumental role. My job is to promote. My job is to put them out there, and then the coach has to like them. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and I think it's very important for me as a head football coach, high school coach, to promote our guys. If they have a level they have in mind, I will promote, but I can't make them like them. And I talk about the recruiting game, and it's gotten more fickle over the last 3 or 4 years due to COVID. These guys aren't taking high school kids like they used to. They're going to the transfer portal. They're going to that guy that had a 6th year because of COVID. And, the high school kids have really, really lost out on this process. And it's disheartening because I think, in my opinion, Lehigh got a great one. And, he'll compete early and he'll compete often. And he's wanted. And, Coach Cahill and Coach Hunt are building something really significant at Lehigh. And why not get on the ground floor of that and build it up? And I think he loves that challenge. And I think he has a BCS. Do I think he has a Power 5 arm? Yes, I do. But he's got a Power 5 brain, and he's got a Power 5 competitive spirit. So that to me is worth its weight in gold. We're getting so hung up on these measurables today, Bob. Excuse me if I go down there, if I take a veer here.
Please.
But with all of these measurables, does he have the wingspan? Does he have the height? Does he have the speed? How about, is he just a football playing dude? We've lost perspective on just recruiting football playing dudes, but that's not my job. That's what they get paid the big bucks for. My job is to help develop them and get them on their way to the next step. And it's been fun. I think we have 18 or 19 kids on college football rosters right now. We had it up close to 30 over the last couple of years, but obviously kids graduate and move on, several IVs, so to me, there's great football all around us, whether it's Division 1, 2, or 3. And if you have a will and a desire, it's my job to help get there. So I hope I answered your question and didn't get too far down on the long-winded trail.
You answered it in spades. Well done. Thank you,
Yeah.
Coach. That's a great
Yeah,
answer.
Mark, obviously, we spent a lot of time together this off season too. I mean, really enjoy, letting me be behind the curtain of, how you work with these guys in the off season. Your 7-on-7s, your 11-on-11s, to build that camaraderie. And, that's really for me very enjoyable because that's how and not only with yourself, but with, all of you high school coaches, I see how you work with these young men and develop them. How valuable is it, kind of having your hands on these guys, for a few extra months, not only teaching them football, but just the life skills associated with being a young man?
Yeah, I think it's a philosophy thing, a philosophical thing. I believe in being a mentor for life. Last week we talked about self-efficacy, and having the belief that no matter what happens to you, you have the strength and the ability and the perseverance to overcome it. How many coaches are talking about self-efficacy, and it's just those kinds of things that I think are super important to help them to handle life's challenges coming down the line and do it through the game of football. When you talk about the extra months, football is 365 and football is unlike any other sport. I think we could go down my coach's cliche road now. All right. It's the ultimate team game. One guy doesn't do his job, the 10 guys suffer that are on the field, and you have to put the time in to be successful. And it's a sport you can only play within a certain amount of time, and this is not to be negative on any other sport. You can play basketball all year round. They play summer leagues. They play 3-on-3 tournaments. They can play. You can't put the helmet and shoulder pads on, but a certain amount of time throughout the year. And that's why it's so special. And you can only play once a week because of the demands of the game physically. So again, your sports that, again, baseball, soccer, lacrosse, you can play 2 and 3 games a week. And that's why they're so special. You only get once. So you got to cherish that opportunity when you get it. So we really do emphasize that a lot about maximizing the opportunity in front of you.
And it's a town as well, Mark, that just lives and breathes football. And so that has to be special for you to coach year after year and for these kids to have, you mentioned it, 9 regular season games plus playoffs for 4 years, 2 or 3 at the most, probably, that you're going to compete at the varsity level. The special nature of playing in front of that community, what does that mean to you and to your players?
Oh, I think it's certainly something that sets the tempo for the whole school year. I do believe football season is a big part to setting a great tempo and an atmosphere in the school community, because it's Friday Night Lights. We have an amazing band. Scott Siegel does an amazing job with our band. Melissa J. Jost does an amazing job with our cheerleaders, and all the people that help support Friday Night Lights. I mean, we have just that football family and that football atmosphere, and it's a community event. So we're very, very blessed, and obviously having home field advantage through the playoffs. Again, we get to be on home soil for a few more weeks, so we got to keep that rolling.
Yeah, a few more weeks, and obviously you've got a bye week this week. One of the things, and I was talking to this with Coach Wechter from Bishop McDevitt here the other week. I was saying that I think that a bye week benefits the coaching staff maybe more than the players, because it actually gives you guys, kind of a few days off where you can kind of maybe, forget about football for a day or two. The kids will recover. No, you don't,
I'm sorry, I'm shaking my head here going, I don't think I ever stop thinking about football in some way, shape, form, or fashion. 365, it's what's next. This was today's, was getting the JVs off, and there's no taking the foot off the gas. Now, we might not be out as long as we normally are in a regular game week, but Sunday we're meeting. Saturday, I was figuring out a way to do X, Y, and Z, so it's 7 days a week commitment. And I think that's some things that people don't really see until you walk in the shoes, especially as a head coach. I got a great group of assistant coaches that have been with me for a long time. And that continuity is important too. You talk about the community aspect of the team, the community. But when you have coaches that our kids know who's going to coach them year in and year out, that also makes even stronger relationships and a stronger program development when you can keep that continuity of staff. So again, I think we're always thinking about football. If we're not sitting in a room together talking about it, we're texting about it. Or did you see this play on Saturday? Did you know, which game, or busting each other's chops about a certain game, or just hanging out? But it's truly, it's all encompassing, you know, not only just from the relationships with players and parents and school, but it's also a relationship we have as coaches. It's pretty powerful.
That's
Bob?
tremendous there, Coach. From a standpoint of, you guys are in a great spot. Your goals are in front of you. And if you accomplish your goals, you'll be playing into mid-December. And I feel like as at the college level, as that game is expanded, you're playing more and more games. You can play 15 games to win a championship in college, adding a regular season game at the NFL level and expanded playoffs. And now at the high school level, you know, you're playing your regular season 9 or 10 games, district play, all the way through to Hershey if you get there. So how do you manage that? Because if you lose the next one, of course, you're going home.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you prepare for the stretch run of, you could be doing this for a month, month and a half of playoff football?
I've often felt like, well, again, you know, I'll steal from James Franklin here, the 1-0 mentality, which again, I'm sure that's not just James, that Coach Franklin that thinks that way as well, but just doing what's in front of you, because I think you create an enormous amount of stress by thinking too far ahead. You know, your eyes are thinking too far ahead, too far down the line. You know, take care of what's in front of you, or there won't be another opportunity. But I've also heard a long time ago, something I kind of, a life motto is, you know, if you want to live a long life, plan for tomorrow. So right now we're planning for tomorrow, focusing on what's in front of us, and then taking it one step at a time. You know, and again, it sounds cliche, but I do think it's a life skill. You know, we talked about 3 words to live by this year. You know, and we did a deep dive on, you know, 3 words to live by. You know, we took some of the stuff from Philly's mantra, like take your swing. You know, you're going to miss all the swings you don't take. You know, and just trying to get guys to, you know, maximize the opportunity in that moment. No matter who you're playing, you got to play at your level. And I feel really confident that our guys played at a high level. We had some dips, we had some lulls, but when you look at our season, and again, I've been a head coach for 26 years. I've had 2 undefeated seasons, and learned from the last one a lot, where I didn't talk about being undefeated at all this year until late into week 10. And we just wanted to continue to stay in the here and now, focus what's in front of us, rather than worry about, you know, if we stumble, you know, teachable moment. But so 26 years, and I think it's only the 5th or 6th time in township football history that a team has been undefeated in the regular season, and they've had football for 78 years. So trying again to emphasize to them how special it is, but that's over now. If you don't win, you stay in.
Right.
So again,
without a doubt.
Yeah.
And Coach, and I think that's an awesome answer. And I'll spin off the question just a little bit to say, from a standpoint of a young man's body, preparing that for a run like this, you know, is it, hey, we're grinding every practice like we were back in the summer? Or is it a little bit of, hey, there's some hay in the barn, we're going to clean things up week to week, but to make sure that we're staying fresh for a stretch run?
I'm glad you brought that up, because, you know, I think we're ultimately fresh right now. We played 2 full games, and I think we needed that in week 10 with Wilson, and they gave us a heck of a battle. And, you know, I think we needed to play a full game, because we hadn't played a full game since week 3. If you look at our starters, they were 40 quarters in 10 games. I think might have played anywhere between 25 and 28 total.
Yeah.
But that bodes well for program development, because now we got a lot of guys to taste what I call the proverbial taste the chocolate. You get your feet under the lights on Friday nights. You know, you have to work at it, and to be out there and to finish the game, or whether it's 3 quarters or 2 quarters or 1 quarter, you get a chance to get on the field, and that's been pretty powerful too. So, but I think from a health perspective, you know, obviously a bye week is great for us to go back and pay attention to some of those little details. But I think we're extremely healthy. We needed a full game in week 10. I knew we were going to get a full game in week 10. I expected us to get a full game from Wilson in week 10. And, you know, they certainly came out in the second half and really tried to get after it, and they did it. So, you know, we have some things to learn from, and that's good. we need some teachable moments here, and we got some. So, we know we got to get conditioned, and we're going to do a little extra conditioning this week. And we got to eliminate some of the penalties that were self-inflicted. So again, we're playing aggressive, and I don't want to stop them from being too aggressive, but there's a fine line between being aggressive or tough and stupid. How's that? We got to be smarter.
Yeah, and not so much for Section 1 of the Lancaster Lebanon League, but for all of the Lancaster Lebanon League, you've gone through some really big changes, incorporating, the Berks League teams into the LL League over the last, 2 seasons. So looking at it before the merger and now after the merger, how would you grade, the influx of the Berks League teams into the Lancaster Lebanon League and how that's improved play for not only the big schools, but for the small schools?
No, I think it's been great. It's been great for the league. It also helps with scheduling. So that helps a lot too, so that's been a positive there. But I also think it brings that some new blood and fuses, some new energy, some new direction. We're anxious to get more involvement from the Berks coaches on a regular basis. We have our Tuesday night quarterback clubs over in Ephrata, which it's coaches get together and have a meal and talk about players of the week and just kind of bring in some different speakers and just, again, the camaraderie of football and bringing them along into the mix has been great. Section 1 didn't change as much as the other sections did because, the addition of Reading was the only one change in Section 1. And I think Troy's doing a heck of a job at Reading. I think he's a remarkable young coach. I think Ben Thompson at McCaskey is doing a heck of a job, an excellent young coach. And I see those two guys as young mentors for life and what they're doing with their kids and their programs. So we're pretty excited about the growth and seeing some good young coaches come into the mix. I'm speaking just from Section 1, but they're in all sections. So it's pretty exciting. I think I think the game of football has never been stronger. I feel like when you talked about it, Bob, adding extra games at the pro level, adding extra games at the college level, looking at the spring leagues with, dare I say, the XFL and the USFL and all those different leagues. I don't really pay attention to too much of it, but just the fact that there's spring football and I think the health of the game is there. I think we've got protocols that were never in place just 15, 20 years ago. The techniques we're teaching are different. The safety of the game is better. And I think we're getting better as coaches too, teaching the game. So I'm excited about the growth of football, and I'm on the downside, being an old veteran here. I used to be the young guy. Now I'm on the other side, and I just want to make sure the game is healthy. I want to make sure we have a game in 10, 15, 20 years when I have some grandkids running around out there. And I want to make sure we have the officials to do it as well, which is another area that's seriously lacking. And we're losing that battle at all sports, not just football. We need more guys and gals getting involved in being officials. Cheap plug there for the officiating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, Mark, thank you very much for a little bit of your time. I know obviously you mentioned you're all football all the time, but I can't thank you enough for the support that you personally have given me and Eastern PA football and in covering the game, and looking forward to doing some of your games here, broadcasting them here in the postseason. So thank you very much for spending some time with us this evening.
So thank you both. Thank you both very much for what you do and keeping football strong. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks,
just
Mark.
go ahead
This
and
was a
exit out,
blast.
Mark, and then Bob and I'll continue the show. Thanks a lot. Take care now.
Thank you,
We'll
Bob.
see you
Good
later.
luck, Coach.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Take care now. All right. Bye-bye. That's your first time meeting Mark, eh?
It is. And what a wonderful advocate for the young men playing high school football for him, for his school district, for his program.
Yeah, Mark, very generous of his time with me. Quite honestly, we spent a lot of, it was always Monday night at Manheim Township for 7-on-7s here, starting late May and then into June. And we even, I think we ran by the team when we were kind of walking around that whole big 7-on-7 thing up in Penn State during the baseball.
Yep.
And that, but he's got a great program. He's got a lot of great kids. I saw that his quarterback Hayden there, the stat of the year is that he had 40 touchdowns and no interceptions. I mean, that's just incredible. But look, they're going to have their hands full, not only in District 3, but across 6A in this state. It's a very talented group of teams. Wouldn't you say, Bob?
It is a talented group of teams, and gosh, I don't know if you have that stat or that graphic handy. That would be one heck of a segue. But
yeah, it would be a heck of a segue.
If,
unfortunately, I didn't have that 40, 40-0 there. And but why don't we just go down? We'll go down like, last week's games here.
Oh, I meant the graphic, by the way. You said, oh, it's such a talented 6A. If you had the large school rankings or
I
power
do.
ratings.
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. Well,
and as you do that, I want everybody to take a look at Bruce's hat, by the way, because Bruce has a really nice hat on today. Maybe you can tell everyone what that is.
I think it's my Bob Long sports hat that Bob Long was, very kind to, allow me to have. But yeah, let's bring up the big school there, the big school top 5, so you can see that. I guess that is a great segue in talking about, the top 6A schools or the big school talent here in the state of Pennsylvania. This is where, obviously a lot of people look, but why don't you run down your list? And quite honestly, you had Mark and Manheim Township in your top 5 pretty much all year.
Yep. All year long. I think that's why I'm his favorite of the hosts here. I don't know. No. Listen, let's go through this because we have a lot of similar schools up here. Sure. St. Joe's Prep, we're going to get to their week. Their week was as impressive as any school in the state. And it was one of their big challenges of the year. And the final score won't indicate that there was much of a challenge. It was a first half battle against Roman Catholic. The Philadelphia Catholic League is a regular season title because unlike most divisions, Bruce, or unlike most districts, the Philadelphia Catholic League is one half of District 12. The Philadelphia Public League is the other half. And they have a red division, which is large schools, and a blue division, which is some of the smaller schools. So they don't actually have a winner for each classification. And because of the PIAA and needing to start district play this weekend, it has to be a regular season award. And somebody in scheduling knew something somewhere because a Roman Catholic was undefeated in Catholic League play going into the game against St. Joe's Prep. Rick Preet's having an amazing year with that team, but St. Joe's Prep took care of business, 45-7. So they remain number 1. Imhotep at 3, I want to highlight them because if and when Roman Catholic beats Archbishop Wood this weekend in a District 12, what would that be? A semifinal? And actually, that may even be next weekend. Yeah, that may even be next weekend. They would play Imhotep in the District 12 championship game. Imhotep has represented the east side of the state in how many straight state finals? They could do that again. Devin Johnson has one of his best teams. But they haven't seen a Roman team this good ever. And I don't know if it puts Rick Preet over the top and the rest of that Cahillite program at Roman, but I can tell you that's a game worth watching. So Imhotep's 3, Bishop McDevitt's been 2 all year, haven't really been challenged, maybe since that game against LaSalle in week 3. There might be a game I'm missing in there. Malvern Prep just moves along. They are undefeated in the Interac, and nobody talks about them because they're not in the PIAA. But if this is truly Eastern PA football, yeah, we're talking about the Interac. And Malvern Prep is so good this year. And then Manheim Township, undefeated. I mean, boy, I know you got some other teams on there on your list, but I feel really good about my top 5. Those are 5 fantastic programs.
I don't think that you could argue against any of the teams that are or not on, either one of our lists.
Yeah.
Obviously 1, 2 are the same. Bishop McDevitt, the more I see them, the more I'm impressed. I think that
we talked about it earlier, Bruce, replacing the entire line of Division I linemen. Well, guess what? Now they have 9 games, these new guys. And oh, by the way, they're talented guys. They may not have started last year, but there's some young guys that will be Power 5 or Division I guys. And they've gotten a lot better as the year has gone on.
Oh, totally agree. Those were the words that were going to come out of my mouth, is that, the line play, especially the defensive line, has just been really rock solid. It's CB West. I mean, my gosh, they just keep on rolling along. Imhotep, what do you say about, that talented team? I mean, obviously you talked about, Devin Johnson and the level of talent that he has. Can they, get back? I mean, they're kind of like the Buffalo Bills of the PIAA. They're making it. I didn't view being a Bills fan, but this could, they're shooting for a third title game. The two previous, they made it to the championship. They didn't get over the top. So
it could be their year. I mean, Pine
Yeah.
Richland is great again this year, though, in 5A. They were the team that got them last year. And here's what I'll say about that, Bruce. I think last year's Imhotep team might have been the best team of Imhoteps that did not win a state title. They're 1-5 now in state finals in the last how many ever years. Last year's team was really good. Pine Richland was spectacular. I mean, if you were to have a tournament of champions, I think St. Joe's Prep would have won. But for example, an Imhotep versus, beg your pardon, a Pine Richland versus Bishop McDevitt game, the way the Crusaders were playing down the stretch, that would have been incredible. And so, I don't really hold Imhotep like, hey, they didn't give that one away. I felt in some ways Penn Trafford, God bless them, deserved to win that game. Imhotep kind of gave that one away 2 years ago in a lot of ways. Last year, Pine Richland took it. They deserved it. And they might be standing in their way again. But I'll reiterate what I said, Bruce. If anybody's overlooking Roman Catholic versus Imhotep in the District 12 title game, they're making a mistake. I'm telling you.
Oh, I totally agree with you there. I mean, unfortunately, we only have 5 spots, so there's some tough decisions. And, and how do you and obviously Downingtown East, I mean, wow, they just roll their rival Downingtown West 35-7.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they
that one hiccup there, though. That one hiccup against Chester is the one I'm interested in your thoughts on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I'm Downingtown East, I think is a team, on that, crescendo going up. And, sometimes you've got to pick those teams. There were several teams that way last year. That was almost the trend in PIAA postseason last year, that were teams that were peaking at the right time. I think that, that was the mantra for last year's PIAA football tournament.
By the way, I'm sorry. I totally screwed that up. It wasn't Downingtown East.
Yeah,
I'm
West
thinking
is
of
the
someone
one that
else.
lost to Chester.
There you go. Thank you.
So, but
didn't forget everything I said.
That's okay. Yeah. No worries. No worries. But I thought that Downingtown East just kind of put their foot on on Downingtown West's throat. They had 4. I think they scored on all, or at least their 4 first half possessions, and never looked back. And that's what you look for in a team. They were at Downingtown West, just played a superior team, and that's the MO for the postseason, is that they've got to go possibly into a hostile environment and play well. And that's Downingtown, East right now. So, just a really incredible effort by them. And since we're, on the topic, why don't we just go ahead and bring up the small school, top 5 too, and kind of get our schools, out of the way here, our top 5, our top list there. So you should be able to see that the Fresh Set It Down small schools top 5 now, right?
Yes.
So
loud and clear.
So anyway, I'll start first with this one. Steel High, I mean, they've been at the top of our polls all year. They've given us no reason to doubt them at all. And I don't recall a team, at least in the lower school classifications, that has maybe dominated a season other than, say, Southern, Columbia, in 2A the last couple of years. like Steel High has this year, coming off of a state tournament championship, they've just been lights out. That's been reflected obviously in both of our polls here. We both had Southern Columbia, even though they've got a blemish on their record, to a division, to a section, or a district
Carmel,
rival,
yeah.
Mount
Yeah.
Carmel. They seem to be on the right track. I've got Troy in there as well. Troy is a 2A school that ultimately has to go through Southern Columbia if they want to, move on. So Troy just dismantled Canton, who was actually in my top 5 last week, but Canton is a 1A school. So, I always talk about the fact that there's reasons why there's different classifications, but wow, Troy did a number on that. Wyomissing has been solid all year. Wyomissing's only loss is to Cocalico, at Cocalico. That's a 5A school on their home turf that Wyomissing lost.
Little bit of a drubbing there. That's the only thing. And I'm
Yeah.
sure why they're down in the rankings a little bit.
And then I think off of everybody's radar this year has been Newman Goretti, who actually beat Wyomissing in the state semifinal in 3A last year. They only have 1 loss, and I don't think it's to a Pennsylvania team. So,
yeah. Beat Archbishop Ryan this past weekend. Yeah.
So Newman Goretti, in my list there.
Okay. Steel High, I think, has established themselves crazy enough as the 1A school, but on the eastern half of the state, which, just to make sure we set the stage properly here, this is the eastern half of the state that we're rating here. Steel High number 1, Southern Columbia. It's not, I guess, I don't know. I don't see this as the juggernaut of the team that lost only 2 games between 2015 and 2021. But until someone takes them off their perch, I think they deserve to be there. Wyomissing jumps up 2 spots in my rankings. And honestly, this might be a 4A, 4B. Trinity West Perry. West Perry actually beat Trinity, if I'm remembering correctly, in terms of my order of operations there. But West Perry got hammered by Steel High. Trinity, it's one that's not going to be on yours and not on Dave's. They do have the 2, maybe even 3 losses, but the talent they have with Mickens at the running back position, I think, can propel them potentially through a state playoff bracket. And I think we will see them in late November. So that's why they're on there.
Yeah. And look, West Perry was in my top 5. I mean, Newman Goretti kind of replaced West Perry in my, rankings this week.
Reasonable.
West Perry, just a solid team. So many times I talked about the fact that, there's going to be that, that battle between Troy and Southern Columbia. Only one's coming out of that district. Same thing with West Perry and Wyomissing. There's only one team coming out of District 3 and 3A. So the bad part about that loss to Steel High was now Wyomissing comes in as the number 1 rank, which means that they would host a championship game between the 2 teams at Bob Wolfram Field on a Saturday afternoon. That would be a really hard one. But West Perry, very talented group. There's none of these teams here are ones that I don't think are any qualms about, talent wise. I mean, it's just a hard decision who you're going to leave out.
Yeah.
So many good.
Well, the good news is it's all going to play itself out very shortly here.
Yes, it will, and it was very interesting. There were a couple of, heartbreaking games that were losses last week. I think what we'll do is I think the game that we really want to recap, that you and I had a lot of rooting interest in, was really the Penn State Indiana game last Saturday in State College. I was there for that one. Truth be told, I'm an Indiana guy. Indiana has played Penn State tough, even, throughout all the James Franklin years. There's that one victory on that controversial touchdown, an extra point, that you and I still talk about.
Nonsense. Nonsense call.
But so give me your thoughts on Penn State's performance, on Saturday afternoon.
They won first and foremost. They got the win. I mean, the season is still alive. It's so difficult. I mean, James Franklin has talked about let's not let a loss like Ohio State beat us twice. They almost did that. The defense, funny enough, gave up a lot of big plays, including 2 in the first half that put Indiana in front. Aller was okay. He made a big play at the end. He threw his first interception. So, he got a lot of firsts out of the way. But from a standpoint of, this football team, Indiana was bad. And they were good in some ways. They made some key plays in big moments, but they also muffed the punt. They also missed wide open receivers at times. And, it feels like a team that could hit on a couple of those big plays that they did and didn't make the same silly mistakes. We could be talking about a different football game. So there were some very frustrating moments in that game for Penn State football fans. There's no doubt about that. But they have the win. They go to Maryland, and then they host Michigan. And they should win the game at Maryland, you would think. I understand that Maryland's a feisty team, but if you can get to that Michigan game, you are at home. I understand that folks aren't giving them much of a chance, but if they win that football game, if they can hold Michigan's running game down, if they can make a couple of big plays, I recognize what a big challenge that is. All of a sudden, all Penn State needs would be Michigan to beat Ohio State in the last weekend of the season, which would probably be the odds-on favorite, Michigan over Ohio State. And as of this moment, Penn State would hold the what would get down to the 5th tiebreaker in terms of getting to the Big Ten title game in a 3-way tie where Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State all have one loss with each of them beating each other. So Indiana, yes, they almost let that Ohio State loss beat them twice. Hopefully a big step for Drew Aller. People talk about that. Hey, he hit the big ball over the top. He's fixed now, or he's a big time, big game hunter throwing deep. I'm not sure that's quite the case. I think he's still going to protect the football. I think the offense is still going to be called as such. But you got to win. You go to Maryland, and all of a sudden, the whole season is still in play, and the biggest game is on the 10th or so of maybe the 11th of November. That's how I look at it.
I think that, Penn State won despite themselves. I think that's kind of the summary of what you said there. They won despite themselves. They won despite playing a subpar. They had a subpar defensive effort. The one thing that nobody's been really talking about over the last couple of weeks is really and James Franklin talks about it all the time, the lack of explosive plays out of the running game. It's just been, I think there was one run of like 20 yards that Nick Singleton had against Ohio State, and they really haven't done much the last 3 games.
That's right. I think there's enough talk about that, but I hear you. It's probably more Aller talk, but yes. I mean, I think they had, dozens of 20-plus yard runs last year, and I think this year they have 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I can't put my finger on, exactly why they're having those issues, but they have to do something about that. And James Franklin's talked about it all year, just the lack of explosive plays. I mean, he's just looking everywhere for that. And it's what I put out there on social media today. I felt that, that play, that pass from Aller to Lambert Smith, might be the play that people will look at Penn State differently after this point. And I think what it does is it creates a confidence level maybe that the coaching staff has now in Aller, that he can perform in these big kind of moments from Lambert Smith. I mean, the coaching staff has got to have confidence in these players that they're going to be able to make that play before they're going to call it. And at least now with the fact that they've, had such a big play to win just a critical game for them to keep going on. I think it's going to lend itself for the coaching staff maybe to loosen up a little bit, with their play calling and kind of turn Eller loose a little bit. I mean, he just hasn't been turned loose. He's checking down a lot. He's going with the short passes, and a lot of that has to do with the formations and the play calling that they're doing. So I think that, that might be the one turning point, and I hope so, that people will look at Penn State before that play and look at Penn State and the Penn State offense after that play. And I think that they'll start to open it up. And I think that 30-point stat just kind of, masked the underlying, problems that there were with the Penn State offense. They were always talking about the fact that they were leading the nation in 30+ point per game performances, but yet, very methodically going about it. And, so hopefully that they can rectify the errors and move ahead. It looks like Maryland season is a little bit on the downside there. I think they lost to Northwestern last week, so not a good sign for them, but a good sign for Penn State going in there. And I'm not entirely sure the history of Penn State, at Maryland, but I can't believe that. That's going to be, too much for them. At least it's an Eastern Standard Time start.
Yeah, certainly haven't lost to them at Maryland since they came to the Big Ten. There was a game in 2014, the non-handshake game, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And you want to know which NFL star? Here's a little trivia for you. Which NFL star played on that Maryland team and was in that handshake line on that cold day in 2014 that elected not to shake the Penn State captain's hands pregame? Any guesses?
Nah.
That would be Stephon Diggs.
Really?
Really?
Wow, that would be a great trivia question for the Penn State show, I mean,
Yeah.
Strictly a Penn State show. That's pretty incredible. So, yeah, and since we're on Penn State, we'll just kind of do all our Penn State talk here. You got a final score this week of how you think Penn State's going to do?
Yeah, like 31-10, something like that. I think they win comfortably. Maybe start a little slow. I don't know. I think they win the game comfortably. I think last week was maybe a little too close for comfort. Maryland licking their wounds a little bit, but Tagovailoa can make a couple of plays and keep them in the game. So would not surprise me to see it a little closer.
Yeah, I like them in the 30s again. I like maybe 35-17, something along that line. But yeah, I like them to win comfortably. I just wish they would get off to a faster start. They start these games so slow. They just never look sharp out of the blocks. And that's got to be excruciating for all of the Penn State fans. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I get it. But at the end of the day, you're scripting your 15 plays and the defense is gearing up with whatever they prepared for your offense all week long. And it's kind of best on best. It's when you have your starting pitcher going against the top four guys in another lineup and something's got to give. So, Penn State, put it this way, Bruce, Penn State is far from the only team in college football that struggles with an issue of starting a little slow. And it's so easy, and I'm guilty of it, of getting a little insular with things. My gosh, how could they have struggled with Indiana? Well, look at some of the other results. Oklahoma lost to Kansas, for God's sake. They were undefeated, Oregon was actually quite impressive. Washington should have lost to Stanford. There are other really good teams in the country, really good teams, national championship contenders that have their own warts, just like Penn State. It's college football at the end of the day.
Yeah, it sure is. And, and especially in the Big Ten, a win is a win, whether it's on the road or at home against whether you're playing, a team you're tied at the top or whether you're playing the team at the bottom there like Indiana. I mean, you still have to tip your cap to Indiana, a team that was, basically downtrodden on the season, comes back from 10 points down in the fourth quarter to tie the game, you know? So you have to give credit where credit is due. Give credit to Indiana, but even more so, obviously, Penn State there, and we both like them here this week. So talk a little bit about, obviously, you'll be broadcasting a game this week. Who've you got? And talk a little bit about that game.
LaSalle High School enters the District 12 playoffs where they take on Father Judge. And as fate turns out, it's happened the last 2 years, actually. Father Judge and LaSalle was the last game of the regular season, and the winner of that game would host the first round of district playoffs. LaSalle controlled the game. Actually, a unique story. In that LaSalle Father Judge game this past weekend, sophomore quarterback Gavin Sidwar threw for 5 touchdowns. That ties a school record, tying himself from September 30th of this year against Calvert Hall. Brett Gordon, twice, arguably the best quarterback in the history of the program. And then Kyle Shermer back in 2013. Wow. So he joins an elite club of which he was already a member. And LaSalle won the game 43-13. LaSalle will have a size advantage and an athleticism advantage at all levels this weekend. I do think they have a very good chance to win the football game if they play to their potential, but it is postseason football. And the winner of that game, Bruce, will face St. Joe's Prep in the District 12 semifinal. In all likelihood, it'll effectively serve as who's going to go to the state playoffs. For as good as Imhotep is coming from the public league at the 5A level, there just isn't an Imhotep at the 6A level this year. So the expectation is that St. Joe's Prep, again, if they're able to beat, let's just say LaSalle in a District 12 semifinal, they would roll right back into a state tournament. But LaSalle has 3 linemen healthy that were not healthy against St. Joe's Prep. They're starting 2 running backs. They have a receiver healthy that was not healthy at the time of the first St. Joe's Prep game. Obviously an uphill battle. St. Joe's Prep would have the talent advantage in that game. However, it's a rivalry game. And last year in that game, LaSalle had the football on St. Joe's Prep's side of the field, down 1 score with 2 minutes left in the game. And that was a team that isn't as nearly as talented as this one. St. Joe's Prep would tell you they made mistakes in that game, and they certainly did to keep LaSalle in it. But there's something funky about this rivalry. Each of the last 3 years, St. Joe's Prep blew out LaSalle once, but the second time they played 2 years ago, LaSalle beat St. Joe's Prep, and last year was a 1-score game. So buckle your seatbelts and hold on, and I'd tune into our broadcast of that one, both this weekend against Father Judge, and then if LaSalle wins, I'd definitely tune into that one against St. Joe's Prep.
Wow. Really interesting. And again, too, I mean, Roman, doesn't Roman play St. Joe Prep this week?
No, they don't.
That would
so
be
Roman is now a 5A school.
Okay,
Roman
right.
played St. Joe's Prep this past weekend, and that was the last game of the regular season. The Catholic League is now a regular season title because it's 4A, 5A, and 6A all bundled into one, basically. And they need to now separate and stratify and get right into district play. So pre-PIAA days back in 2007 and before, for the Philadelphia Catholic League, you would play a regular season, you would get seeded. There would be 4 teams left, and they would go, the top 4 teams would qualify for the playoffs. You play a semi and a final. Now, in order to get into the district bracket, you need to start earlier than you could crown a true Philadelphia Catholic League champion. So St. Joe's beat Roman Catholic. They're the Catholic League champs this year by virtue of going undefeated in the regular season. And then Roman's going to go to 5A. St. Joe's Prep's going to go to 6A, and they're going different directions now.
Going different directions then, yeah.
Roman plays Archbishop Wood. I don't think this weekend, but next weekend they get a bye. And then they would play Imhotep, which again, Archbishop Wood, they're starting to kind of come back. And I do think that Dave Armstrong's doing a great job. Roman should have no issues this year against Archbishop Wood, and then it sets up that Titanic Imhotep versus Roman Catholic. We know Devin Johnson and Rick Preet, they know each other real well. That'll be a great game too.
Yeah, it sure will. This week here in District 3, we start our district tournament. And the game that I'll be covering will be Exeter Township. We'll be playing Hershey High at Hershey Park Stadium, which is obviously near and dear to both of our hearts. Really always love broadcasting games there at Hershey Park Stadium, but that's going to be a real knockdown, drag out, 8-9 District 3 5A matchup. A couple of coaches that I really like, Mark Painter with Hershey and Matt Bauer with Exeter, and going to be a really interesting game. I think it's going to be as close as the 8-9 seedings, talk about, but so much in District 3 here. There are so many teams on bye this week. Obviously, Mark and the entire 6A is off. There's just kind of a smattering of a few games throughout the district, and it doesn't really get moving until next week, and then really full tilt the following week. So we're kind of hurrying up and waiting for the postseason here in District 3, with a lot of the big teams here, off on bye, and then most of those first round games, obviously there's, the higher seeded teams are really kind of playing the lower seeded teams. So really not a lot of compelling matchups for a couple of weeks here in District 3, but it's going to be very interesting. And I think that that's the case around the state too. It was very difficult for me to kind of look at this week's schedule to find compelling matchups. Maybe in District 1, Penncrest at Marple Newtown. And that was an 11-6 matchup. Maybe in District 11, Bethlehem Catholic is at a Blue Mountain in the 4A tournament there. Actually, I guess 6A in District 1, the number 12 seed is Coatesville. They'll be going to number 5 seed CB South. But not a lot of real compelling matchups, in the Eastern bracket this week. So I guess we'll kind of forego the, look ahead until, next week when when things really start heating up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a plan. You mentioned Wyoming Valley and Mount Carmel, another interesting game in the 2A, but I don't really, I agree. I think here would be my advice to the folks out there. There are more broadcasts, and we love when it's a real produced broadcast, replay, digital graphics, things of that nature. Folks like you and me broadcasting the games. But even beyond that, if someone flips on a huddle cam, there are some great games out there. So what I enjoy doing on a Friday night where I don't happen to be calling a game is popping one of those games on or flipping between games, because if you're a high school football fan here on the eastern side of the state of Pennsylvania, this is really where it gets fun. And at least for me, this is where we see our numbers jump every year. We have a really loyal base of followers in the regular season, and you bring more of the casuals. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You bring more folks that are interested in their local high school or high school football scene in Philadelphia that have had other things going on throughout the fall. Now's the time to pop on over to YouTube or wherever these games are being streamed, because there are some doozies coming the next month. And the state, the various broadcasting entities around the area have done a much better job of getting most of these games on film and live. All that to say, the best advice I can give is go out and see one of these games. Pick a Friday night and go out and watch it in person, because that's where you really fall in love with the sport.
Yeah, and a little earlier rather than later too. As we say, it really starts to cool down as the month of November kicks in. It's actually pretty cool on the deck here tonight. The winds picked up and it's kind of raw, and it does feel like I'm broadcasting, a game and that here
Sure.
this evening.
I'm doing fine in here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks
We're-
for asking. Right. So anyway, hey, listen, man, it has been a lot of fun. Another one in the books here, and we'll be back probably next Tuesday. I think we took Halloween off. This is actually Mischief Night. So I don't know if anybody's
Watch your back.
Mischief Night?
Watch your back out there.
Oh,
yeah.
I better watch my back here. Yeah, I got my lights up and everything else, but I think we'll be okay. But
You're a sitting duck.
yeah, I know I've had a lot of fun tonight, and I think we'll be back next Tuesday or Monday, depending on how things go. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We've had a lot of loyal viewers, and we want to thank Mark Evans for his time tonight. And best of all, I want to thank my buddy Bob Long for being on the show here tonight. And we'll see everybody again next week. So for Bob Long, my name's Bruce Badgley. Thanks for watching Fresh Set of Downs. We'll see you next week.